What's going on, everybody? Today we are going to be talking about the very famous Malcolm X speech given in 1963, titled "The Ballot or the Bullet." So let's go ahead and get into it. So the learning objectives for this particular lecture are going to be centered around these four ideas, right? So what is the ballot or the bullet? Like, what is the metaphor that Malcolm X was going with? We're going to look at Malcolm X's criticisms of both the Southern Democrats, also known as the Dixiecrats, and other civil rights leaders. And then finally, we'll conclude with Malcolm X's philosophy on black nationalism. All right, so here we go. Historical context. You need to know what's going on in America that kind of leads up to the events in question, right? So, Malcolm X announced his separation from the Nation of Islam after a decade of being a spokesperson for the NOI in March 1964. He gave the ballot or bullet speech in April 1964, so a month later after getting separated from his job, right? Where he was a minister of Islam for the Nation of Islam, right? So, thing about the Nation of Islam is that they advocated for separation versus integration, which the civil rights movement was calling for integration. The NOI was basically saying, no, we need to be separate. We're not trying to integrate. So much so that the NOI forbade its members. So it forbade, for past tense of forbid is forbade. It forbade its members from taking part in the U.S. political process. So the NOI in the 60s was actively telling its followers not to vote, that made a lot of the civil rights folks really mad because that's what they were talking about, right? We gotta vote, we gotta vote, we gotta vote. So that is the historical context. We can assume that Malcolm X felt a certain kind of way when he was giving his speech at this church. I forgot the place. But yeah, so he's giving this speech a month after some very, iffy things went down and his relationship with the NOI was real tenuous. So here we go. Ballot or the bullet? The ballot, that equals voting. Engaging in the political process, being an active citizen, right? So you can be a citizen of America just because you were born here in this country, but that doesn't mean that you're an engaged citizen. You gotta vote. You gotta understand what they say that democracy works best with an informed electorate, but the electorate, the people that do the electing, you and me, we gotta be informed. Meaning we got to understand what's going on. What are the issues facing our communities and people and society and stuff right now? What are our resources? What can we do? That's all being an engaged, active citizen, right? The bullet then, violence if necessary. So really what he's talking about is block organizing. Either we block vote, meaning we all say we identify with this community, then we as this community are going to vote one way on these issues because we need to get what we need to get, right? And if violence is coming our way, then we as the block organization, if we can vote together as a block, then we can fight on the block together, right? And that's kind of what he was getting at, right? So that's the ballot or the bullet, right? Here's some direct quotes. We all have the same problem, a common problem, a problem that will make you catch hell whether you're a Baptist, you're a Methodist, or a Muslim, or a nationalist. We're all in the same boat, and we are all going to catch the same hell from the same man. He just happens to be a white man. All of us have suffered here in this country. Political oppression at the hands of a white man. Economic exploitation at the hands of a white man. And social degradation at the hands of a white man. He's calling for a black unified entity, right? And he goes on to say, no, I'm not American. I'm one of the 22 million black people who are victims of Americanism. One of the 22 million black people who are the victims of democracy, nothing but disguised hypocrisy. Got to think of this as a speech too, like that little rhyme at the end, like we call that a rhetorical device, right? That would have made the crowd go crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like that was a bar back then, right? So he's saying regardless of if you are black, it don't matter if you're Baptist, Methodist, or Muslim, or you believe in America, you're still black. And you've been catching hell from whiteness in all these different ways: political oppression, economic exploitation, social degradation. So much to the point that as a black person, you don't really feel like you're an American because America ain't really shown you, America hasn't really shown you that kind of love. Like you got to love it, but it doesn't love you back. And whenever it does talk to you, it's always been kind of, you know what I'm saying, like abuse a little bit, right? So ballot or the bullet, right? Moving on to the Dixiecrats. So a Dixiecrat, according to Malcolm X, is a Democrat that wants to uphold racism in public policy. A Dixiecrat is nothing but a Democrat in disguise. They have seniority in D.C., right? The only reason they have seniority is because they come from states where Negroes can't vote. So basically what he's saying is there's this within the Democratic Party. So he's like, you can't trust Republicans at all. We already know that. But within the Democratic Party, they got these folks called Dixiecrats, and they're basically Democrats that come from southern states that still believe in, they may not be Republican, but they still believe in racism, right? And so the Dixiecrat looks liberal enough to win votes from black folks, but never really does anything for black folks, right? We see this a lot in the Twitter commentary nowadays. You know, Biden's pandering to the black vote. No doubt. Yes, he is. It's politics. Every politician that you've ever seen has pandered for your vote. They'll say whatever they got to say if you will vote for them. And that is the way it works. That's the way it's always been, as far as I can tell in my studies of American political history. So Malcolm X references Plessy versus Ferguson, which outlawed segregation. But then if you still practice segregation, would that not make you a criminal? And so if you are elected from states that are majority black, but black people can't vote, then guess what? Segregationist equals a criminal, right? So then moving on to civil rights leader, he airs out some of his beef. So he takes aim at the idea of the civil rights movement and their position of nonviolence. If you need a refresher on that positionality, go check the letter from a Birmingham jail lecture from MLK, right? Malcolm X says this: I'm nonviolent with those who are nonviolent with me. But when you drop that violence on me, then you've made me go insane. And I'm not responsible for what I do. If basically what he's saying is, I'm different than the civil rights movement. What I'm talking about with the NOI, well, not with the NOI anymore, but with this ballot or bullet, you know, like dynamic, I will treat you the way you treat me. And the minute you treat me in a manner that I don't think is becoming, we're going to have problems and we're going to remove space for excuses. And I will come straight to that chest. And that's all it is to it. Right? And you can't really call me responsible for it because I'm now acting in self-defense. If you come and be violent to me, I get to be violent back. I was being nonviolent. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was cool until you started, right? So what he wants to do ultimately is he says that we need to expand the civil rights struggle to a higher level, to the level of human rights, universal human rights, right? So let's not just go with voting. He was like, if we make it human rights, we can bring the U.S. government before the UN court, right? Like, in his own way, Malcolm X was addressing global anti-blackness, right? So, black nationalism. This is the last couple of slides. So, black nationalism. The political philosophy of black nationalism means that the black man should control the politics and the politicians in his own community. No more. What's happening? So let's look at this idea of segregation versus separation, right? So you know what separation means is that, we just separate, right? All right. So let's look at separation for a quick sec before we get into segregation. Let's say we could split America in half and say, okay, there's going to be a white America and there's going to be a black America. Let's say we just draw it straight down the line from Canada to, I don't know, Texas or the tip of Mexico, whatever halfway down the middle of the country is. White America, black America. Black folks, you can live on this side of America. It's your own America. You can do your own thing. You are all the way good. Y'all are in charge of y'all. Do you think that white America they may be willing to split the country in half geographically, but do you think they would split the resources in half? Or would they just give black folks black America and be like, well, it's wilderness. Good luck, buddy. And now everybody's on naked and afraid. I mean, you see what I'm saying? Like that's separation. Segregation then. A segregated district, I'm down here. A segregated district or community is a community in which people live, but outsiders control the politics and the economy of that community. You got racist white folks in positions of political power that are making laws, passing policies and rules and stuff that affect black communities, but they don't like black communities. So how do you think their public policy is looking? It's oppressive, it's marginalizing, right? The political philosophy of black nationalism means that the black man should control the politics and the politicians in his community. The politicians are supposed to represent the community, right? That's what black nationalism is for Malcolm X. Let us separate so we can do us and us can represent us. Our interests are being advocated for in other halls of power, right? And here we go with the long quote. Here we go. There's no white man going to tell me anything about my rights. Brothers and sisters, always remember, if it doesn't take senators and congressmen and presidential proclamation to give freedom to the white man, it is not necessary for legislation or proclamation or Supreme Court decision to give freedom to the black man. You let that white man know, if this is a country of freedom, let it be a country of freedom. And if it's not a country of freedom, change it. We will work with anybody, anywhere, at any time who is genuinely interested in tackling the problem head on, non-violently, as long as the enemy is non-violent, but violent when the enemy gets violent. I can respect that. Like I can all the way respect that. So that's the end of that joint. Make sure that you've read it. If you have any questions, let me know. Take care.